Thank you so much for inviting me here today and also for your patience as I ran across Washington trying to avoid the presidential motorcade. So apologize for being late, but thank you for your patience. And it really, it's funny because it's the first talk I've been late to in my 5 months as director of NIST, and it's the most important audience that I've talked to. So maybe there's going to be a correlation there I better watch out for. But I want to thank ANSI and really all of the members of the U.S. standardization community for your commitment to standards. I share that commitment, and hopefully you'll see that reflected as I go through my comments. So I want to start by saying something that I think, well, hopefully it's obvious because where I am, but I love the mission at NIST. It's to promote U.S. innovation and industrial competitiveness. And it's all about ensuring the nation's economic security in light of today's global economy, which, as you know, today's global economy is a little bit competitive, right? And so I spent over 30 years at NIST. Thank you for that introduction, Joe. Went to academia for about 5 years and now returned as the director. And it's really this NIST mission. It's this critical time where we are in the nation's history in terms of our competitiveness. And it's the incredible dedicated people at NIST that really brought me back. And I'm happy to be there at this time, even though there are, I think, a lot of challenges that we are all going through together in terms of the global economy. So ensuring U.S. leadership in international standards development is a top priority for me in my role as NIST director and as the Undersecretary of Commerce for Standards and Technology. And to me, of course, this means supporting the private sector-led system in the United States. So at NIST, many of you already know this, but we develop different kinds of standards. And the first are physical reference materials or materials types of standards. And these are used to validate and benchmark measurements made both nationally and internationally, really all over the world. And some recent examples include reference materials for COVID-19 and monkeypox, along with a lot of other types of artifacts, like the ones used for measuring a gallon of gas or the strength of steel. But NIST also works very closely alongside you to support the development of documentary standards for manufacturing quality, for health and safety, for global interoperability, just to name a few. And NIST scientists and technical staff participate in over 3,000 different standards activities, which is about equal to the size of our workforce. And this is a statistic that I know you know very well, but an analysis done by the Commerce Department's International Trade Administration, our sister agency in the Department of Commerce, found that approximately 93% of global trade is affected by standards. Again, something I'm sure you know well. And this in turn impacts trillions of dollars in trade. So it's a critical part of the work that we do with you to support the economy. And I can't overstate the importance of coordination and cooperation with the private sector on standards development. It's really one of the main reasons that I'm here with you today. And as Joe pointed out, really collaboration, cooperation has been a hallmark of so much of the work that I have done as a researcher all the way up to my leadership positions. And so I bring that to you here today, a commitment to be a good partner to you. So let me state first and foremost, and very clearly, the private sector-led approach to standards development is vital to the nation's technology and innovation leadership, which ensures our nation's economic and national security. And in light of, again, the current global competition landscape, it's also very clear that there's a national need to promote and quicken the development of emerging technologies. It's also important that these technologies are manufactured here and that we can ensure that as these technologies come to market, we can support their entry into the global marketplace, and that is underpinned by the development of standards. So as some of you have already known and are involved in, there's a lot of strategic coordination going on right now in government around documentary standards, particularly for critical and emerging technologies. And this effort is really meant to complement and align with ANSI's United States standards strategy. and is really part of a broader emphasis on U.S. competitiveness and innovation for this entire administration. It intends to renew and strengthen the U.S. government approach to bolster and support the private sector and to ensure U.S. leadership in international standards development. And so the need for the U.S. government to be strategic is really motivated by many factors that can't be ignored in today's environment. First, we face new challenges into U.S. competitiveness, particularly from China. The pace of technology and development is rapidly increasing. And although we have a leading role in many areas of standards development, I know that we can't just rest on our laurels. And so, as you also know very well, standard strategies have been released by both China and the European Union, making clear the importance of standards to economic competitiveness. And these strategies also make clear how our competitors would like to shape the landscape to their advantage. So it's important for the U.S. government to be coordinated, to present a strategic and a proactive vision that builds on what has made the U.S. approach to standards so successful over the last several decades, and ensures that we are effectively positioned to address some of the emerging challenges in international standards development as they develop. So our system has resulted in international standards that are technically sound, that are favorable to U.S. stakeholders and ensure access to global markets. And the U.S. economy has benefited so much from this approach, and I think we should all celebrate that. But in recent years, China has dramatically increased its international standards development activity and has clearly stated a desire for its companies to set global standards, thus leading to market dominance. So it's essential that the U.S. public and private sectors remain fully engaged in international standards development, promoting technical solutions, strong, sound technical solutions, particularly in critical and emerging technology, and working closely with like-minded partners and allies. Now, I want to stress, and this is such a critical statement, that we should not aim to exclude any one country from the international standard system. This is a very important point that I want to underline over and over again. It's important that our like-minded partners and allies share this vision and do not exclude private sector stakeholders from their respective systems. We need to hear all the voices at the table. We need to engage in dialogue, and we need to come up with the best possible technical standards using our robust system, private sector-led system. So the United States and our international partners must continue to uphold and assure the integrity of the international standards development process and the integrity of SDOs, and make sure that none of that is compromised. And we maintain that standards should always be developed in accordance with WTO's technical barriers to trade. That articulates the principles of transparency, openness, impartiality, and consensus, effectiveness, and relevance and coherence. And as we celebrate together World Standards Week here in the United States, we also celebrate the U.S. and EU leadership in the ITU with the election of Doine Bogdan-Martin as ITU Secretary General-elect and Mr. Tomas Lamanauskis from Lithuania as the ITU Deputy Secretary General-elect. And we also celebrate Dr. Cho Seung-Won of the Korean Agency for Standards and Technology and Standards as the new ISO President-elect. And we look forward to working with the leaders in these different fora. We at NIST thank ANSI, the Department of State, and everyone in the public and private sector for their hard work to support these new standards leaders and to support them moving forward as they assume these roles. So as Undersecretary for Commerce for Standards and Technology, my team will coordinate across the U.S. government and across the Department of Commerce to strengthen our standards development efforts and ensure that the whole of government is greater than the sum of its parts. So in this tradition, this implementation will be accomplished with private sector stakeholder engagement, as a core value. So we want to talk to you. We want to hear what you are thinking about how the government is moving forward. And we want to hear your opinions of how we do that. And we plan to and expect to work very closely with the ANSI community as we move forward together in reinvigorating U.S. leadership and engagement, particularly in standards in emerging technology areas. So NIST is ready to go. We're ready to work with all of you. We're ready to work with our international partners. And we're hoping to launch several events such as roundtables across various technology areas and various sectors. Of course, we'll work closely with ANSI, with other SDOs, and with the SDOs and industry leaders to conduct these events. So you will definitely be hearing from us very, very soon on some of the actions that we anticipate in the coming weeks. And by taking actions, we intend to support both the U.S. government's strategic positioning around standards, but also support you and ANSI's national standard strategy as we move forward. We will strengthen, enhance U.S. government leadership alongside the private sector. And our collaborative engagement in international standards, we believe is crucial to our success. We couldn't possibly do that without working closely with the private sector. So I welcome input from all members of the ANSI Federation. Your input will inform our work, it will drive us forward, and it will drive us to our goals in helping the government to support U.S. technology and innovation leadership under this administration. So together, we must move quickly to show the world that we're serious about preserving our leading role in this challenging landscape. So switching gears for just a minute, I'd like to say a few words about CHIPS, the CHIPS Act, and what NIST is doing. So as many of you are very aware, in response to the chip shortage that rocked so many U.S. industries over the past several years, industry and government representatives came together with a focus on addressing challenges related to that semiconductor shortage. As a matter of fact, I just heard from somebody at NIST that we had ordered a bunch of new pumps and they were delayed by a year. So we're all feeling, due to the semiconductor shortage, so we're all feeling this in so many different ways related to our research, our everyday life. But these discussions around this shortage and the pain we're all feeling led to the CHIPS for America Act, first authorized in the FY21 National Defense Authorization Act, and then passed as the CHIPS and Science Act into law by President Biden on August 9th, 2022. And this CHIPS and Science Act, it appropriated funds for chips, and I'll talk about that, for semiconductor electronics. At the same time, it put an authorizing language to bolster science in the United States, but there was no appropriations behind that particular part of the bill. And I'll mention that in a minute. So as the president said during the historic signing of this piece of legislation, the innovations from this act will help lead the world in future industries and protect our national security. It is a $52 billion investment in the future of semiconductor electronics in the United States. And it provides $50 billion over 5 years to be administered by the Department of Commerce and NIST. Now, the vast majority of this funding will go out the door in the form of $39 billion in financial incentives programs designed to build out U.S. fabrication facilities and bring manufacturing of semiconductor chips back home, back to the United States. And the additional $11 billion will invest in U.S. R&D. So the next big breakthrough that we see in semiconductor electronics is not only discovered here in the United States, but is manufactured here. Workforce development cuts across all of these programs to ensure there are highly skilled workers to fill all of these jobs that we intend to create in the United States. And it's estimated by the Semiconductor Industry Association that we will have about 280,000 new jobs in the United States that we are currently not prepared to fill related to semiconductor industry. So there's an additional $2 billion for secure chips and the commercialization of microelectronics R&D that's going to be administered by the Department of Defense and, of course, coordinated with the NIST programs. Now, collectively, these programs are intended to help restore semiconductor manufacturing capacity and create a robust and collaborative research effort that will help us capture our fair share of leading edge technologies and future technologies for the United States economy. For NIST, stewardship of the CHIPS Act is a sign of trust that Congress and the administration really have in us based on a reputation that we built up for more than a century related to research and diligent work. It will truly be a transformative opportunity for the nation. And I was giving a talk a few weeks ago, and I mentioned that NIST has really been preparing for the CHIPS Act for about 80 years since its first research in semiconductor electronics, and partnering with the industry to develop standards over the course of their lifetime. So not only does NIST have an exciting new opportunity to shape U.S. leadership in advanced semiconductors and microelectronics, but the CHIPS and Science Act of 2022 reinforces the critical nature of our leadership in measurement science, in research, and in standards engagement in support of U.S. industry. As I mentioned, the science portion of the CHIPS and Science Act is not yet funded. It's just authorizing language, but it reauthorizes NIST in a section called NIST for the Future. And if funding is appropriated for NIST of the future, it will help us expand our work in many new exciting areas, particularly critical and emerging technology areas that I was just speaking about. So it calls for significant increases in NIST programs in areas that include bioscience, cybersecurity, greenhouse gas measurement, advanced communications, really many other areas where we're deeply engaged in international standards development. And the Act also clearly calls out our role in leading government coordination in U.S. standards-related activities. So throughout CHIPS, NIST is called on to work with many agencies, the National Science Foundation, U.S. Department of Defense, the U.S. Department of Energy, many agencies beyond, including our work in semiconductors, but beyond that as well in critical and emerging technologies. But even before the passage of TIPS, we plan to enhance our engagement with private sector stakeholders on key standards, technical and policy issues, and we'll continue to fulfill that standards coordination mission that was laid out in the National Technology Transfer and Advancement Act. So as mentioned earlier, we plan to launch a series of roundtables, webinars, information sessions. For all of these events, we want to work with you. So my ask here is for you to partner with us on that to ensure that the U.S. government is moving in the right direction and helping to ensure that standards are developed in a way that are technically sound in an open process and, of course, with consensus-based decision-making. So there is so much work to be done. We're at a very exciting time. I look forward to seeing the great things that you do, and I look forward to working together to accomplish even more together through this public-private partnership. So thank you. Thanks for the time and the opportunity.
Thanks so much, Laurie.
Yeah.
Great comments to tee off the rest of the day's discussion. I think that we have a few minutes for questions. If you're about 5 minutes, if people would like to ask. I know you've provided a lot of incentive for comments and questions. So anybody in the room or online?
Yes.
Good morning, George Borlace, UL Standards and Engagement. Thank you for being here this morning and making the schlep down from Gaithersburg. My question kind of stems from your discussion about the private-public partnerships. A couple of years ago, NIST started the QEDC, the Quantum Economic Development Consortium. Do you see that as a model for the future? Or are there other different public-private partnership models you're seeing instead?
Oh, I really like that question. Thank you for that, George. And I think a lot of people came from a lot further than I did, and I made it here on time. So I appreciate that, giving me that grace as well. Yeah, the QEDC is a really interesting model. The Quantum Economic Development Consortium is built around, of course, quantum information science and technology. And there, really all the companies involved in the development of new technologies, new services related to this emerging quantum market are really present in that fora. It started out primarily as a United States-based forum. But now there are a few international companies that have to be vetted pretty exclusively to get into that, the QEDC. What I like about that is it really pulls together a lot of different information on what that emerging market is struggling with. So for instance, they've talked about issues with supply chain. They've talked about issues with other countries developing standards or trying to put forth standards ahead of the time that the United States market might be ready for. And so it really is such a great forum to build up around critical and emerging technologies, to bring together all of the players from the supply chain, from the quantum computing emerging market and various other sectors related to quantum sensing, et cetera, and have them all at the table to address the problems before they occur, hopefully before they occur. So thank you. Yeah, we are looking at that as a model for engaging around many of these critical and emerging technology areas that I mentioned.
Thanks. And there's a question in the back, Mohammed Ali.
Yeah, Mohammed Ali from HP. Thank you for your excellent remarks and your leadership. My question is, how can we best promote the principles of U.S. standards strategy of the values of the decentralized bottom-up sectoral-based approach to other countries, as well as navigate the exclusionary practices that we have been experiencing in the standards development process from some of the other countries?
Yeah, you ask a hard question, so I think I'm gonna. No, it's a very good question and something that obviously we're all struggling with right now. We do have a lot of engagement with international partners discussing some of these issues. I know that you have as well, and we've talked to you about that, and we've talked to many of our partners about how to appeal to maybe like-minded partners that we want to make sure we can be present at the table and have our voices heard. And so those discussions are really ongoing. But I will say that we're engaged in the Tech and Trade Council. We're engaged in really many other different international fora more broadly to try to address these particular issues. I'm sorry, I can't give you more detail right now, but the discussions are ongoing and they're pretty intense.
Okay. So I see Rich Forsilius, and then I think that'll be the last question. Oh, sorry. Okay. After Rich, Joe will close out the question period.
Yeah, good morning, Rich Forsilius, Lockheed Martin. And I'm especially interested in NIST engagement internationally, ISO, IEC, ITU, JTC1, et cetera. And you cite the numbers of NIST representatives in committees and working groups and what have you, subcommittees and technical committees. However, it would be helpful to have an easy way for us to advise NIST, as we do internally. We have an ongoing gap analysis of emerging and critical technologies and where we should be aligned. But if we could easily advise NIST of where we think there may be a U.S. government gap in one of these international technical committees, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I'll take that back to my team and we'll discuss it. And thanks for that suggestion. I think it's best if we can get a free flow of information between us, because clearly we don't want to, clearly there are gaps, and clearly there have been times when the U.S. government, and I'll just say NIST, hasn't stepped up when there were obvious gaps that we might have felt. So we want to do better. And knowing where they are and where you want us, right, I think is really important. So I will make sure to try to open lines of communication.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe?
Yeah, good. Okay, so I'll follow up on this issue because this is what I was going to raise as well. I think we have a tremendous opportunity to link up with our international partners in many ways. And we do that quite often.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that with delegations coming in from US that we can interact with them when we go to their locations. And when they come here and we host them. And I think engagement of NIST, as you suggested, I love PPP, public-private partnership. That's my theme.
Yeah.
That's how we go forward. And I think we can do more in that area by identifying the critical areas in which you are focused, which we also will benefit from, which others in their own way would have some value to also attend to. And I think we can perhaps start planning those things ahead of time. And we can do that by identifying the meetings that we schedule, by sharing those with you. We get representatives from the industry, but we get less representation from this. Used to be more from time to time. It has changed. I think we need to revive that a little bit more. And there are many, many things. We have meetings, for example, with Germany, with UK, with other parts of the world, Australia. People are dying to talk to us. And in those areas where there's a benefit for us to engage with them and do something jointly ahead of time, especially if we're countering things which are not acceptable to us, such as what's going on with the mandates coming out of EU. And we want to come out with different standardization approaches than they're proposing. So I think these dialogues, with your power added to it, when we take it with our own delegation, which includes industry and other people, standards organizations, as well as conformity assessment people, we could do a lot. So I would like to hear if your thoughts are aligned to that type of initiatives in the future.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that. I would love to be engaged and do some of these meetings jointly. I think it's a really important show of the strength of the public and private sector in the United States to approach it
Very
together.
powerful.
I agree. So thank you. And thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I think that, there are a lot of meetings that I have. There are a lot of meetings that you have, and together we can approach some of these with greater strength. So thank you.